The papacy of Pope Leo XIV, the first American pontiff, and the burdens of history, hope, and healing. The election of Cardinal Robert Prevost as Pope Leo XIV marks not only the beginning of a new papacy, but the unfolding of a moment of seismic, symbolic, and spiritual weight. As the first American pope in the history of the Catholic Church, Pope Leo does not merely inherit the throne of St. Peter. He inherits a matrix of expectations, crises, historical wounds, and the yet unwritten possibilities of a faith in flux. His papacy stands at the convergence of doctrine and diplomacy, tradition and transformation, unity and upheaval. A church in internal turmoil, healing the body from within. Perhaps the most urgent challenge facing Pope Leo is to heal the deeply fragmented internal soul of the Catholic Church. In the wake of Pope Francis' pastoral revolution, which opened the Church to greater inclusion, less juridical rigidity, and more grassroots listening, Catholicism was split. One wing believes the Church has veered too far from its doctrinal roots, lamenting a loss of moral clarity. Another accuses the institution of clinging to patriarchal and Eurocentric structures that alienate women, the laity, and the youth. Pope Leo must walk a theological tightrope. He cannot undo the reforms of Pope Francis without triggering backlash from the global South and progressive movements. Yet he must also offer doctrinal coherence and liturgical consistency to traditionalists who feel spiritually adrift. The Latin Mass debate, LGBTQ plus pastoral care, and the inclusion of divorced and remarried Catholics will be flashpoints. His ability to reconcile rather than polarize will determine whether his papacy becomes one of healing or of further division. Ecumenical outreach and the dream of Christian unity. Leo's burden is not merely to unify Catholicism, but to bring Christianity itself into greater alignment. The schisms between Rome and the Orthodox churches, between Catholics and Protestants, remain among the greatest unresolved wounds of Christendom. The modern era has seen increasing cooperation, particularly in the shared mission of social justice, environmental advocacy, and religious freedom. But full communion remains elusive. What makes Pope Leo's moment unique is that the theological rifts are now more linguistic, cultural, and political than they are dogmatic. Thus, the possibility of reunion with the Eastern Orthodox Church and even partial reintegration of Protestant denominations is more realistic than ever. Leo's Augustinian humility, combined with Franciscan inclusivity, could usher in the most serious effort at Christian reunification since the Second Vatican Council. Women in the Church, between tradition and transformation. No issue stirs more tension across the Catholic spectrum than the role of women in church leadership. Pope Leo inherits a church that has already begun examining the possibility of restoring the female diaconate and elevating more women to roles within the curia. But many believe this is not enough. As Pope, Leo must address not just representation but theology. Can the Church, while maintaining its teaching on an all-male priesthood, articulate a more coherent and empowered theology of womanhood in ecclesial life? His decisions here will determine whether the next generation of Catholic women find themselves within the Church or seek spiritual homes elsewhere. The Global South and the future of the Church. One of the least discussed but most vital issues Pope Leo must address is the shifting demographic center of Catholicism. Today, the Church is growing not in Europe or North America, but in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. These communities are often more devout, more vibrant, and more socially embedded than their Western counterparts. Leo must translate representation into empowerment. That means appointing more African and Asian cardinals, recognizing local liturgical expressions, and integrating global South theology into magisterial discourse. If he succeeds, he could birth a truly global papacy. If not, the Church risks being seen as colonial and irrelevant by the very communities that represent its future. Addressing the crisis of faith in Europe and the rise of atheism. The West, once the citadel of Christianity, is now one of its most indifferent terrains. Secularism, apathy, and even hostility have overtaken European cities that were once home to saints and synods. Pope Leo must rekindle the flame of faith in lands where it flickers faintly. His task will not be proselytism, but presence. Can the Church speak meaningfully to a generation shaped by scientific skepticism, existential loneliness, and moral relativism? Can it offer beauty, truth, and coherence in a way that speaks not just to the soul, but to the imagination? Confronting mental health, addiction, and societal anguish. The post-pandemic world is plagued not only by viruses, but by despair. Pope Leo must lead the Church into deeper solidarity with the mentally ill, the addicted, and the isolated. He must train clergy to offer more than sacramental preparation, to be true spiritual first responders. This will require partnerships with psychologists, mental health advocates, and healthcare workers across the faith spectrum. The clergy abuse crisis from denial to justice. No papacy can claim credibility without addressing the still simmering horror of clergy abuse. While Pope Francis initiated important structural reforms, including Vos Estis Lux Mundi, enforcement has been uneven. Survivors remain skeptical. Trust remains broken. Pope Leo must not only continue the reforms, he must personalize them. Transparency, survivor care, and episcopal accountability must become non-negotiable pillars of his leadership. Anything less will stall the moral recovery of the Church. Financial transparency in Vatican reform. The Church's moral voice cannot be separated from its economic behavior. Pope Leo inherits a curia bruised by scandals from property deals to opaque accounting. His American sensibilities toward corporate transparency and accountability may offer an unexpected advantage. To restore trust, he must pursue full financial audits, modernize Vatican investment strategies, and ensure global diocesan cooperation in transparency efforts. Making peace with history, apologies, and reparation. Leo's papacy must also reckon with the sins of the Church's past. From the Inquisition to its role in slavery, colonial conquest, the Holocaust, and the abuse of indigenous peoples, the Catholic Church bears historical burdens that must be acknowledged, not buried. True leadership will require more than apologies. It will demand action, funding educational reparations, supporting indigenous rights movements, and openly revisiting how Catholic memory is taught in seminaries and schools. Facing modern science with ancient faith, Leo must reframe the age-old narrative that pits science against faith. As debates around artificial intelligence, bioethics, and quantum consciousness intensify, the Church must become a leading voice in shaping not only the morality of science, but its meaning. By encouraging dialogue between theologians and scientists, Leo can present a Catholic vision of creation that is both intellectually rigorous and spiritually profound. The burden of being the first American Pope. Perhaps nothing will define Pope Leo's legacy more than his national origin. As the first American Pope, he faces both awe and anxiety. To many, America symbolizes cultural imperialism, consumerism, and division. To others, it represents innovation, resilience, and freedom. Leo's task is to represent not America, but the universality of the church. He must resist nationalistic tendencies while harnessing his diverse background, Chicago-born, Latin America-tested, Rome-refined, to shape a papacy that speaks many languages and belongs to no one country. The legacy he builds. As he steps onto the loggia, wearing the white robes of the fishermen and carrying the Augustinian fire of love and learning, Pope Leo I enters a history both glorious and grievous. His every decision will be scrutinized, his every word interpreted. And yet, in this moment of global fragmentation, he may become the glue that rebinds not only the church but the wounded world beyond it, not by power, not by decree, but by the witness of humility, the strength of truth, and the radiance of mercy. The burden is great, but so too is the promise. Viva Papa Leo.